Vytjie Mentor claiming that the Guptas wanted her as public enterprises minister. What do we know so far about those allegations?
Well, Michelle, what we really know is based on what Vytjie Mentor is claiming. We also have established something of a timeline when it comes to the ministers in charge of public enterprises during Jacob Zuma's 2 terms in office. And we're just going to flesh that out a little bit as we try and piece all of this together and establish why she may have made these claims. Firstly, some background on Vytjie Mentor. She is a former lawmaker. In fact, she once headed the ANC caucus inside the National Assembly, so a fairly senior official when it comes to Parliament in South Africa. Now, Michelle, let's take a quick look at where it all kicked off. This was a Facebook post. Vytjie Mentor sending this out on Facebook in March 2016, claiming that the Guptas had offered her that job in late 2010 after Barbara Hogan was sacked as the Public Enterprises Minister. She claims that the Guptas told her that she'd get the job, Michelle, if she agreed to scrap a flight route that was being operated by South African Airways, and we'll get to that in a moment. Now let's take a quick look at the public enterprises portfolio. Barbara Hogan, as we mentioned, was the minister up until 2010. Jacob Zuma deciding to sack her in a cabinet reshuffle where he got rid of 7 ministers. Marillier Guptas was the man who replaced her. Of course, Guptas has been accused of working side by side with the Gupta family, particularly during his time at Home Affairs. 4 years later, Michelle, and there is a change in the guard. Jacob Zuma secures his 2nd term and he appoints Lynn Brown as the Public Enterprises Minister. Again, this is a minister who has been accused of having strong links with the Guptas, particularly when it comes to their dealings with Eskom. Now, Michelle, this is particularly important. We mentioned that flight route that was being run by South African Airways. It all centered around flights between South Africa and India. Of course, the 2 countries, Michelle, are both part of BRICS, so you might expect our national carrier to be flying directly to places like Mumbai, for instance. But SAA didn't think so, Michelle, and in March 2015, they essentially handed it all over to 2 airlines. One of them is Jet Airways, you see their logo right there, and the other is Etihad. So these 2 airlines were working hand in hand to get South Africans to Indian destinations. Of course, the question was, why did South African Airways decide to do this? Well, Vytjie Mentor has suggested, Michelle, that it was all part of a plan by the Guptas to benefit Jet Airways. Not clear what their relationship with Jet Airways is, but Vytjie Mentor seems to suggest that there was some kind of relationship. And it all begs the bigger question, Michelle, what role did Jacob Zuma play in all of this? Vytjie Mentor, Michelle, claims that he was actually in the same building when the Guptas made this offer to appoint her as the Minister of Public Enterprises.
Yeah, former President Jacob Zuma is the elephant in the room at the state capture inquiry. Not directly sort of paper trailing his involvement in state capture, but certainly his presence, as you say, his presence, so to speak, in the room of many of those deals being struck.
It is indeed, and it's going to be tricky, I imagine, Michelle, for the state capture inquiry to try and piece all of this together and look at the bigger picture. Is there necessarily a paper trail which points to the scrapping of that flight route between South Africa and India? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks as always, Michael Marillier, tracking the story of, or at least that one very small part of a much larger puzzle there of the state capture as that inquiry gets underway in Parktown.